have no idea why Daiki Kogyo decided to make things so complicated, so difficult when there is an easier way, and that is by just making the head removable, right? Hi and welcome back to the channel. I'm Steven, today with a scale figure review. This one right here in front of me, I'm not very familiar with this figure actually other than the brand behind her, which we'll get to that in a moment. So this scale figure over here, I had to look up myfigurecollection.net to figure out her name. So apparently we are looking at Daiki Kogyo's 1x5 scale Tsuno Musume, which is an original character released back in January this year, many months ago, for a price of 22,000 Japanese yen before shipping and taxes. Alright. So this is a very tall figure at 32 centimeters head height, more like horn height. At 1x5 scale, yeah, quite a bit taller than a typical 1x6 scale, and this is what the box looks like. Fairly compact box actually. So this figure does not really cost much to ship otherwise, and the one thing I really noticed about this box is how tough and how solid it is. Like, even if the postman treated your parcel like a basketball, he throws it, yeah, this box just wouldn't dent. I don't think it'll dent very easily. So you don't really have to worry about this figure taking any damage during shipping because the design of the character is fairly simple, and I don't see any delicate, fragile parts, maybe other than the horn, but even if the horn falls off, yeah, you can just super glue it back. This pair of swords next to her, they are separate parts in the box. Originally, I actually filmed an unboxing video of this figure over here, right? Which is what I normally do nowadays. I will just insert an unboxing video first in front before proceeding to review it, but something unfortunate happened. Yeah, that video file somehow was corrupted, but fortunately it only affected the unboxing part and nothing else, right? And I decided to not refilm it because, I mean, I have to take the figure, put it back in the box, and then open it up again. This doesn't really make any sense when the figure is so simple. Like, you're literally taking the figure out from the box, plugging it into the base, and then plugging in this pair of swords next to her. That is all. That is after removing some plastic films, of course. This instruction sheet over here, this is something interesting which will be the main focus of the review today, along with the quality of the figure brand called Daiki Kogyo. Okay, so firstly about Daiki Kogyo, I have mentioned this figure brand quite a number of times in my figure news feeds. I have always called them an average figure company, B-tier figure company, pretty much very close to Kotobukiya's level when it comes to the level of quality control and details and so on. I hope that Daiki Kogyo delivers on the quality department. They are kind of a B-tier company, you know, not the very best figure company out there, but far from being the worst, right? They are somewhere in the average side of things. Kotobukiya level perhaps. Basically, they give you edgy figures, X-rated figures at a large scale, 1x6, 1x5, but they don't really ask for much in terms of the pricing. So they are great value purchases. And I suppose you can make use of today's video to have a rough idea, a rough grasp on what the quality of this figure brand is like. This definitely isn't my first Daiki figure. I used to own the other one. I forgot her name already. She is from a H anime, and I really loved that one, but I sold it anyway in the end after doing a photography work. Yeah, this one right here, because I needed to raise some cash, raise money to purchase other figures. Yeah. While the assembly process was very simple and straightforward to the extent I feel it is unnecessary to show you guys an unboxing, you can't say the same about the cast-off process of this figure. I was sweating my ass off, feeling really anxious when I tried to remove her clothes, and that is despite following the instruction over here to the letter. Okay, so instructions here are very simple and detailed, but at the same time, you can kind of tell that this is a bit ridiculous. Like, how are you supposed to remove the clothes? Basically by brute force. Yeah. The head of this figure is actually articulated almost like a Figma, and judging by the range of motion I'm getting, a full 360-degree turn, and also the head can tilt up and side a bit, you know. There has to be a ball joint underneath in the neck region. Also, there is no indication at all in the instruction sheet over here telling you to remove the head before you remove the clothes. So I wouldn't even try to pull the head out because I risk breaking the ball joint, not to mention this isn't my own figure, right? And this is where things get a bit confusing. I have no idea why Daiki Kogyo decided to make the head articulated with a ball joint instead of making it removable completely so that the cast off process is so much easier. The clothes on this figure, they are very rubbery, very soft PVC, and to remove it, you literally brute force it over her head, like how you take off your clothes as a real person, right? And this is the part which really gives me all the sweat because, yeah, you just have to rotate the head a bit and then adjust it in a way where you can remove the clothes over her head, and then at the same time, yeah, those pair of horns over there is kind of getting in the way when I tried to remove her clothes. So there is a very specific angle involved when you try to remove it over the top. And once you get it out, yeah, the underwear beneath, the wrapping beneath is very easy to remove. And I have no idea why Daiki Kogyo decided to make things so complicated, so difficult when there is an easier way, and that is by just making the head removable, right? Why would you even come up with this mechanism? I have no idea what they are thinking over here. This cast off method is one of the oldest methods around, very old school method. A lot of action figures from 5-8 years ago, they all make use of a very similar mechanism where they get very flexible, very rubbery outfit and you just force it off the figure, right? And this mechanism has a lot of disadvantages in the sense that the first thing is that if you repeatedly cast off the figure way too often, you're not supposed to do that actually. Yeah, the material will become a bit too distorted that when you try to put it back together again, it can become harder. Mainly for the clothes, right? Along the side of the clothes, normally you'll see a very ugly seam line over there, and that is where the pegs are. The pegs that hold the parts together, the front half and the rear half of the shirt together. And over time, this peg will become harder and harder to put together. And eventually, you will give up trying to plug it back and you'll just leave it like that, which is not very nice to look at. With this figure over here, at least on the right side, the pegs are fairly easy to plug into, but on the left side, it is the exact opposite where after I push the pegs in, shortly after it'll just bounce back right out. Like it is very difficult to plug the clothes fully in and to conceal the seam line. Not necessarily because the clothes are already distorted, but more of an inherent disadvantage with this type of cast off mechanism, right? So in the end, if you own a figure like this, eventually you'll just give up and leave the clothes hanging like this without the pegs being plugged in. And it is not very nice to look at, especially for people who are more perfectionist, just like me with anime figures, right? Nowadays, this mechanism is no longer that common except in figures which are lower cost. 1/5 scale, 22,000 yen is actually considered low cost, right? Another disadvantage which you guys are quite familiar with, I think, yeah, paint transfer. Over time, as the figure ages, or if you display the figure in a relatively warm room, maybe you live in a hot tropical climate like I do, yeah, there is a risk where the brown color paint on the clothes will rub onto the skin surface of the figure somewhere inside. And obviously that is not a good thing. So these are the few things to bear in mind when you decide to buy cast-offable figures like this one over here. One more thing I noted with this figure is this pair of katana over here. It is a bit on the loose side of things. They fall off rather easily. The fitting to the clothes is not very tight and I feel conflicted. Like whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I can't decide because the bad thing is that obviously the part falls off very easily and I don't like that. But at the same time, being a bit on the loose side is not necessarily a bad thing because yeah, should you choose to cast off the figure, the process is very easy. It is almost effortless to remove this part over here. And you won't accidentally break anything while doing so, right? So I suppose this is a subjective opinion. Personally, I would like the part to be ever so slightly tighter. Moving on to the actual figure itself, the sculpting, I compare it to the official product photos by Daiki and also the originating artwork, the more I look at the figure, the more it feels like the figure itself, the actual product, looks even better than the official product photos, which is always a nice surprise, right? So the face on this figure, no problems at all. I actually like it quite a lot. And in case you display the figure from this angle and you don't like how the face looks like, the head is articulated, you can always readjust it. That is a very nice bonus to have. But in the end, I still prefer a head that is removable rather than an articulated one. Moving on to the paintwork, this is where my comment on Daiki Kogyo being a B-tier average company is so true. You can actually see it in the paintwork on this figure, right? The shading and the gradients on the hair at least, and the metallic paint on the horn look really nice. I really love it a lot. But moving on to the outfit, this is where you start to see flaws if you observe very carefully. For example, all these white color straps on her outfit. Yeah, you just look at it very closely and you will start to notice where the paintwork is not very clean, not very neat. You can see a bit of paint bleeding, very minor one, or the finish on the surface is not very smooth. The white color paint along the sides of the outfits over here, yeah, they are also not perfect. You'll see a bit of paint bleeding over there into the edges around the dark brown region. And this is the kind of quality you can expect from Daiki Kogyo. From a moderate to a far distance, the figure looks fine, but if you observe very carefully on the paintwork, especially in the intricate, detailed parts, this is where you'll start spotting some issues over here, and it is very obvious when I use a macro lens to film it, right? Very obvious. Whether this amount of imperfection on the paintwork will bother you, I suppose that this is something very subjective. Some people will be very pleased with this figure. This is good enough for them. But for me, as someone who wants to review every single figure in detail, of course, I'm going to nitpick on every single flaw I can find on the figure just to be as accurate as possible whenever I review a figure. To me, the figure still looks fine in anyone's collection. I mean, to put it on the shelf and then you just enjoy the figure the way it is. You're not going to stare at the figure at this distance, this close every day, every time. So I suppose that this level of imperfection is acceptable, especially at this price point of 22,000 yen. If you can get it under 20,000 yen, this figure is an absolute bargain even. And the last thing about this figure is regarding the base over here. This is where it is so obvious Daiki Kogyo cut cost perhaps a little bit too much. The first thing is the base design, just plain black plastic. I believe this is injection molded plastic, like, you know, they did not even spray paint the base. This is pure black plastic. That is what the color of the material is like when it is inside the machine, you know. They did not paint it. The second thing is that the weight distribution of this figure is not very well balanced. As you can see her from the side, yeah, the figure is leaning forward a bit, so the weight is shifted to one side, yet there is only one single metal foot peg. In front, near the toe region over here, yeah, there is no metal foot peg. The second peg behind is a huge plastic block. And I don't think that is a good idea. As you can see, this figure is very wobbly when you shake it. I'm not going to shake it too much. So I am not very happy with the amount of support and stability of this figure, to be honest. And that concludes the figure review of this figure of Tsuno Musume from Daiki Kogyo. What do you think about this figure? On one hand, I do think this is great value purchase regardless of the flaws. But on the other hand, well, for an original character like this one, it is either you like it or you don't. If you like the character design, or you know something about the artist and you support the artist, you will go ahead and buy the figure regardless. This is not something many of you are going to own one or even consider buying, because this is such a niche character. This is something based on the artwork after all, which is why I was focusing on Daiki Kogyo as a brand itself with this review. I want to let you guys have a look at the kind of quality, the kind of figure they make, and you guys will have a rough idea on what to expect should you consider a figure by Daiki Kogyo in the future. So until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel for more high quality figure reviews like this one today. Until then, I'll see you guys again very soon. Goodbye.